Hello everyone, today we're here with Jeremiah, the tech team leader at SWD, and we're going to be going over things that you should be doing to prepare your rig for storage. So Jeremiah, if you could quickly go over the basics that everyone should be considering, why they would go into storage and what to do when it's going into storage.
So main reason people go into storage is, one of the rigs or all your rigs are not being used for a prolonged period of time, so you have to store them. I guess the time change, depending on what you're going to do, is, from 0 to 2 weeks, anywhere. You can be spraying or recircing. Anywhere past that, you want to consider more strict storage guidelines.
Okay, if that's the case, is there basics that you always do regardless of the length of time, or is it always dependent on whether it's a short or long storage period?
No, the basics for any storage is preventative maintenance before storage. So the biggest point is if you're putting your rig up for storage or thinking of putting it up for storage, take time to do preventative maintenance. Rebuild the pumps if they needed it. Take care of a few things on your rig before putting it to storage, because then when you take it out of storage, you have less likelihood that you'll have to do more. Like I said, rebuilding pumps, changing liquids, checking your compressor oil, checking oil on your generator, stuff like that prior to putting it up to storage is an important part and the first step, no matter what the length of time for the storage is.
So you said the 0 to 2 week period. Is there, I'm guessing, specific things that you would do and not do because it's a short period?
0 to 2 weeks, most guys will not, do any change outs of the liquids in the machine. So 0 to 2 weeks, if you're, starting the machine up, recirculating, doing some spray outs just to maintain the movement of the fluids in the lines, it's okay from 0 to 2 weeks. So that we consider that short-term storage. So instead of pulling the rig down and spraying big jobs, you're just turning it on, turning the heaters on, letting it power up, doing a quick spray out if you can, recircling the lines to make sure nothing sets up in the lines, make sure the ISO doesn't crystallize, anything like that. Anything past 2 weeks, we highly recommend that you begin to think about long-term storage. So that's taking the ISO and the resins out of your lines and preparing it for long-term. So that's anywhere from 2 weeks to greater than 30 days.
So for the ones longer than 2 weeks, you want to purge everything, get it all fully clean so that nothing's holding up?
We recommend it highly. A lot of guys will recommend, DOP in the lines. The first caution there is if you're doing the ISO side, to make sure you use a solvent or a cleaner before the DOP, because ISO has a tendency to get caught in a lot of lines. I know we've had discussions about this back and forth with some colleagues, but it's important to use a cleaner on the ISO side to make sure that you get all the ISO out. Because as we know, ISO sets up, it either crystallizes or hardens, can create blockages in the lines, create weird points. So we always recommend using a cleaner on the ISO side before you push DOP in. And then, of course, in long term, make sure you do the resin size as well. We all know resin is caustic after long term. So if you leave it in those lines for too long, it could have long term effects on your spray hoses or the internal workings. So we recommend after, anywhere from 2 weeks to 30 days to purge the resin side with DOP as well, if you're going to store it.
Now, for the solvents or cleaners that you would use before the DOP, is there anything that you use personally or that you would recommend people to use?
Yeah, there's a CU6 glycol ether. It depends on the machine and the lines, and then of course the recommendation from your manufacturer as well. Some manufacturers recommend different products than others. Like I said, any really solvent-based cleaner, an ether-based cleaner is good, but you always want to make sure that you flush it out properly with DOP to make sure that you don't leave any in the lines, because you don't want to leave that cleaner in the lines, because of course it's more caustic than the DOP, so you don't want to leave it in there.
So the DOP is a substance that you put in afterwards to make sure that you've cleared out. Of course, we've talked about glycol ether and how that can be built up and it can get really solid and stock up the lines.
Yeah. So DOP is just basically a storage oil. It's safe to be in the lines for prolonged periods of time. Basically keeps everything safe where the fluids that you'd normally have in there wouldn't for long periods of time.
And for anything that, of course, whether it be short or long term, is there anything that you should be doing while it's in storage to just be making sure that it's okay? Anything to be checking?
Yeah, making sure your seals are all good. So if you put the storage oil in, of course, you're going to seal the system to maintain that integrity. So you want to make sure that nothing's leaking. You're not losing storage oil anywhere, because if you start to lose it, of course, you're going to have air bubbles. So you basically keep an eye on everything, maintain the fluid in the system. So if you see leaks or you're losing fluid, you want to make sure that you get it back in there find out where it's leaking, seal that leak so it kind of keeps a sealed system.
Now, is there anything else aside from, like, of course, the basics for that you thought we missed or that you would like to go over more in detail?
I mean, just keep an eye on the pneumatic systems as well. I know you can't power up for long-term storage, but if you have stick pumps, taking off the head cap and lubricating your O-rings on the air motor sides or putting a couple drops of pneumatic oil in the fittings will help just keep oil in there, because of course it will dry up for prolonged periods of time. So make sure that you keep an eye on the pneumatic systems as well. Don't just think the fluid systems need focused on. Maintain the pneumatic system, take stuff apart, re-lubricate your O-rings, stuff like that, especially when you're going longer for 30 days. It's really important to keep an eye on the pneumatic systems as well.